Welcome back to Sailing El Haleo! This week we're going to tackle some smaller projects. I like to call them quality of life projects, and they're just kind of rounding out some things that were a nuisance the last trip we made to Florida, and just trying to improve things that would make our day-to-day life a little bit easier. So we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. Last season, my largest source of daily irritation was very easily getting the iPad to stay in place. When you've got a very slippery iPad that you're using for navigation, it has a mind of its own, especially on a slippery boat deck. It wants to go everywhere, and that's a problem. Now, I do have to say I love having Navionics on the iPad. I can take it wherever I want. I can take, and I constantly know where we are, what's going on. I have it in bed with me at night. If I have any questions, I can pop it on and make sure that our location is good. And I do love the Navionics has been bulletproof ever since I got AIS. Now it's connected to the AIS system, and Navionics gets its GPS position from the AIS GPS antenna, which is awesome. It no longer relies, excuse me, on the internal iPad GPS antenna, which did have some drift, and sometimes it would lose signal, and it always seemed to do that right when you needed it most. So it wasn't the best, but now that it's connected, wirelessly to the AIS antenna, it's just been wonderful. I love it. I don't have any problems with Navionics at all. But getting the iPad to stay in place is tricky, and when you've got I always try and prop it up, and you have to keep it out of the sun. So the iPad has a tendency to overheat if it's in direct sunlight, which is understandable, and so that was a problem. I always had to try and keep it out of the sun. So, at different times of the day, I'd put it in different positions, and, at noon, I'd have to prop it up on top of the hatch to get in the boat. And that's a curved surface, and that's a pain too. And, someone would come by and rock you, it would inevitably fall off, and if it hit the deck, it could break. And one time it slipped off, and I went to try and catch it, and I actually knocked it inside the boat, and it fell 5 feet down, and luckily it didn't break. I don't know how it didn't break, but I knew I was just asking for trouble, going through another season doing that. And also the power supply for the iPad, I had to use it takes a higher wattage than what you can get through like a normal cigarette plug. So I tried that at first, and it actually wouldn't, the iPad would lose charge throughout the day, so that didn't work. A normal USB plug just didn't do it. So that was an issue as well. So because of that, I had to bring my backup power supply. So I have a backup power supply with an independent solar panel, and that's if everything goes wrong and the electric system eats itself. I have a backup that I can use for navigation. And excuse me, got a frog in my throat. But anyway, so I had to use that system, that backup battery supply, last year for the entire season, which is a pain in the butt. You drag this foldable solar panel up on deck, you fold it out, you have to have the power supply up there. It's just extra steps that you don't want to do every day, and then you have the solar panel flopping around on windy days. It's just a pain in the butt. So I wanted something that would keep the iPad in place at all times, and I could charge it from the boat's power supply. So that's why I built this box for it that it goes into, and it's got two computer fans on, blowing on the back of it all the time, and that's to keep it cool. And it does have a power supply that I can plug into the battery bank, the lithium iron phosphate battery bank, to charge it. So no more external system for charging. It'll stay cool. And I also do have a new system for shade on the deck, and I'm going to get into that later. That's got nothing to do with this, but so I built this box, and you'll notice there's a space on the top, and that's actually for a new depth gauge. So I bought a new transducer, I think that's what it's called, sensor, a new depth sensor, and a new display for it, and that's going to go right above the iPad in that space in the box. And in order to install that, I need to cut a hole in the bottom of the boat, which I just didn't want to get into this summer, so that's going to be a project for a little bit further down the road. And the reason why is sometimes the current depth gauge that I've got, it works fine, but sometimes it's really hard to see it in the sunlight. So with the new shade system that I've got, I'm hoping that'll clear that up too, but it would be nice to have it just right in front of your face when you need it. So I will eventually install the new depth gauge, just not quite yet. Another big annoyance that I had last season was every time I wanted to use significant AC power, I have two inverters. One's 500 watts and the other is 3000 watts. So anytime I wanted to cook or bake or do anything like that, or heat up water for coffee, that kind of stuff, or a shower or whatever, I did have to crawl all the way to the back of the boat and manually turn on the 3000 watt inverter, which was a major pain in the ass. And not only was it annoying for me, but the dogs actually, when I'm sitting, at the navigation table, which is where I normally am, the dogs like to lay beside me in the quarter berth. And in order to get back there to turn it on, the dogs would have to move, which they were not real happy with. So we don't like to upset the crew. And so they actually make Victron, who makes all of my electrical components. They make something that's called a VE Bus Smart Dongle, and it's super easy to install. All you need is a positive and negative connection or power connections going to your bus bars or a battery. And from there, it takes a Cat 6 cable that goes in and connects into your multi-plus inverter, which is what I've got. So it's super straightforward. It's probably the easiest install that I've ever done. And then that allows you to use the Bluetooth Victron app, which I use for everything. And that can allow me to turn on and off the inverter from anywhere in the boat, which is awesome. It sounds stupid, but crawling back there, 400 times in a few months is really annoying. So this will be awesome. I can just turn it on from my phone and use anything that I want to, and I won't disrupt the dogs, and it'll be wonderful. And I do have to give it to, I do have to say, one thing I like about this is Victron has now changed the way that you can log into something using their app. So if you've ever bought Victron products in the past, anytime you'd connect to it with Bluetooth, there's a PIN code, and it's six digits long, and initially it's all zeros, so it's 6 zeros. Everyone knows this. It says it right on the app. Your PIN is 000000. Then you can go in and change it. That always bothered me. Now, the first thing I did with all of my products was change the PIN immediately. But if you're walking through a marina with your Victron app open, you can see what everyone's got, just by walking by their boat. And if someone didn't change the PIN, it would be super easy. It always bothered me because I'd never do it. But if you had some jerk that wanted to screw up your day, they could go in and change your PIN if you left it as the default, and then you'd be locked out from your own equipment, which would be, I don't even know what you do at that point. That would be a tragedy. So what they do now, and I didn't discover this until after I had drilled the VE Smart Bus dongle to the wall, is now they have stickers on them with, I forget their term, but it's like a code. And it's a code that's on the equipment, and you have to enter that code into the app before you can change the PIN, which is awesome. It was a pain in the butt for me because I didn't know about it this time, but I'm glad they did something like that, because I always worried. I mean, it wouldn't affect me, but I worried about other people being locked out from their equipment, which would just really suck. So this is going to be Amazing. It's the simple things. This will just make day-to-day life a little bit easier. And a third project to improve our day-to-day life was to get some sort of shade in the cockpit. And I came across these umbrellas. They were on arms that you could adjust, and they looked like they might work. They were just little umbrellas, and you could switch them in all different directions. They clamped onto just about anything. So I ordered one just to see how it would work, and this is the extra large size. They do have two different sizes, and I have to say I was bitterly disappointed. Yeah, they're adjustable. You can get a bunch of different angles, but they're super, super flimsy. I'll keep them and try and use them for the dogs. You know, I was going to buy a couple extra to give the puppy dog some shade, but I think I'm going to have to kind of go back to the drawing board. This just is not going to work, and it kind of sucks. You know, this, I think it was around 50 bucks, and it's just, you can see when I'm flopping it around a little bit, it's just extremely flimsy, and once you get it set in the position you want, you know, you let it go and it moves a couple more inches from the weight of it, so it's just all around garbage. So you see anything like this, yeah, best to avoid it. It's just cheap crap, and hey, but now I know. And that's all we have time for this week. I would love to give a massive shout out to our Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I certainly wouldn't bother making these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotten. Thank you guys so very much. Your support means the world to me. And I do have one legacy patron member, Joan Lindbow. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We miss you, Joan. If you would like to join our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up, and there are hundreds of videos and photos of behind-the-scenes stuff, and I try and update it pretty regularly, especially when I'm traveling, to let you know where I'm at and what's going on in real time. And you would also help support the channel, which would be awesome. And if you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a bunch. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.